the money, or how much travel, that's another issue. But that's where we are. This travel's been done. The bill has to be paid. The money has to be transferred because it's not in that account. I think it's kind of ironic as far as this $20,000 goes. The reason I pulled item 19 on the consent calendar, which we're going to be talking about later, is the ability to recover that $20,000 from another budget unit. So, this whole travel issue, I have to reimburse the county for what was deemed, for lack of a better word, a difference in travel where I went and my lack of a documentation and everything. And I'm willing to do that, although I don't know how I'm going to calculate the figure. But anyways, I want to get this whole issue behind us, and I'm going to support the motion to transfer the funds because it has to be done. I mean, they're entitled to their travel, and it's the per diem, and that's just the way it is. We got to come up with the money. The bigger issue is, it's $20,000, and we don't really have the money, and it doesn't look like we're going to have less next year. And so, every budget issue, the CEO has been meeting with all department heads on, and the little things. That's the only way we're going to survive is the little things. And I'm sure that the grand jury, probably more than any other budget units, are completely aware of that. But I want to get behind this whole issue. But Supervisor Colfax, I do agree with your comments and your reasoning, and I've seen it from all sides. But this whole travel issue and what's appropriate travel and what it's kind of a dark area. But I think Mendocino County, all sides, has been well scrutinized over it, and I'd like to see any other local government or any other state government have to go through the scrutiny that Mendocino County has in this whole issue. So, Mr. Chairman, I will second the motion.
Okay. There is a motion before us and now a second. Further discussion. Supervisor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to support going forward with rectifying the expenditures here and covering them. I think absolutely that's our responsibility. I want to do that. I just don't think pulling it out of promotions, because we've seen some money floating there, one of the few places, I guess, that the CEO's identified. I just don't think that's the appropriate mechanism. And so I think we need to do our job thoroughly, and we need to look for where is the appropriate place. I certainly think we need to pay it, but I think in paying it, I think we also need to come up with what's the budgetary plan so we have a full understanding for next year, and then move on with it. So I just don't think it's appropriately placed under promotions. That's economic development. I just can't concur with where we want to address that. I think it's doing a disservice to the public. I don't think it's appropriate to pay it out of economic development. I think that there are other places that we should be looking at. A more thorough analysis would provide us that. So I'm certainly willing to consider that if we're willing to send it back to the CEO and have him do his due diligence to really look further at the expenditure issues and where it's appropriately placed. And I don't think economic development's it. Thank you.
Thank you. You can see my hesitancy of why I brought this item up. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, there is a motion and a second before us. I'll call for a button vote on this.
Did you
so
take
please.
Public comment?
No, I did not. Would you like public comment? Any additional public comment on this issue? Okay, seeing none. Yes, there is. I'm sorry. Please step forward. State your name. You're going to have to come forward, sir, so we can place you on the record.
Question I had was
Sir, please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Thomas Smith,
Thank you.
Fort Bragg. You're talking about $17,000 to get representatives from the coast over to Ukiah to attend board meetings. Apparently those funds aren't available now to help these representatives to come here. Is that the issue? Is that what you're talking about? Or did I miss something?
It entitles all meetings of the grand jury, not just attending this meeting. So they have meetings on their own, they have subcommittee meetings, et cetera,
Throughout like a fiscal year?
throughout the entire year. That's correct.
All right. Shoot, that was my question.
Thank you. Thank you. Additional members of the public wishing to speak to this item, please step forward and state your name. Try and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
My name is James Hamilton. I see about 50 people in here, and they've got a call out for people wanting to be on the grand jury. Now, from the comments that I've heard this morning, I would doubt that anybody would want to be on the grand jury. I would recommend that the grand jury be placed under the Attorney General's office so that there is some bite in what the grand jury says. If the grand jury says that somebody has to do something, then somebody has to do something. Now, if we're going to pay the grand juries for transportation, then the grand jury's got to be paid for transportation. I take the Daily Journal. The only reason I take the Daily Journal is to see if my name's in the obituary column. I
Like
disagree
many of us.
with mostly what the Daily Journal says. The only people that I've heard comment on the grand jury this morning is the grand jury foreman and 2 people that the grand jury talked about. I can't understand this. And they were negative on what the grand jury had to say. Now, this would make me not want to be on the grand jury. I'm retired. I could be on the grand jury. I've paid taxes in Mendocino County for a lot of years, and this upsets me to no end. I just can't understand it. But I think if the grand jury was placed under the Attorney General's office, then we would have a whole different ballgame.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Other members of the public? Supervisor Smith.
Comment on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The point is not about the payment. It's about the planning, the budgeting, the follow-through, and the adherence to that. And at this juncture is where it's appropriately placed in the budget. That's our concern here. It's not if it's going to be paid. The important decision is where do we pay it? Which fund do we pay it out of? And I just don't think economic development is where we should be doing that.
Thank you, Supervisor. Other comments from the board? Okay, now I'll place the button call for the vote on the motion to approve the transfer of the funds.
Motion carries with Supervisor Smith and Colfax dissenting.
Thank you very much. Now let's move to somewhat enjoyable activities that this board has afforded. And this will be a series of proclamations. I'll list the sponsors, the individual supervisors to read the proclamations, and then at the end of each presentation, I'd like to ask the supervisor making the presentation to remain at the presentation site to have some pictures taken. So there's about 5 or 6 proclamations here to be made. The first one is item 7A, possible discussion and action on including adoption of a proclamation recognizing May 4th through the 10th National Corrections Officers and Employees Week. So if that group would step forward, please, and Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Proclamation of the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors recognizing May 4th through the 10th, 2008 as National Correctional Officers and Employees Week in Mendocino County. Whereas Mendocino County is privileged to have a group of men and women who are trained professionals and who serve on a daily basis unarmed in the Mendocino County Jail. And whereas the daily management of inmates requires special training, sound judgment, and courage. And whereas these professionals, with little thought to their own personal safety, serve valiantly to provide humane conditions of confinement while ensuring security and contributing to inmate rehabilitation.